Welcome to the Startup Sessions, the #1 web show and podcast for trusting your gut, breaking the rules, and starting something meaningful. I'm Michael Knouse, and today I'm here with Jordan Nemrow from San Francisco. And Jordan started a software business, and you know what? He failed. He failed, and he's here to talk about what went wrong. So imagine working on your business idea for about a year and a half, and then having your customers tell you that they don't like your product and they don't need it. Well, today we're going to dive headfirst into really more of a case study of lessons learned from a failed startup. You know, it seems like there's a lot of great success stories about businesses that are growing and working, and those are super important. But the conversation that I think's missing is about the business ideas that don't work out. Because the fact is, many new ventures do fail. So the question then becomes, why? Why do they fail? And how can we learn from these failures and turn this knowledge into the strength to help us not repeat those same or similar mistakes in our own businesses? So if you're looking for unbelievably valuable insight and lessons learned from a failed startup, you know what? Today's your day, because we're blessed by someone who's brave enough to come on the show and share his experience for our benefit. It's all coming to you right now on episode number 13 of the Startup Sessions. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Startup Sessions. I'm Michael Knouse, and today we're going to go down a little bit of a different path. My guest today is Jordan Nemrow. He's agreed to share his story with us about his decision, his tough decision, I'm sure, to shut down a startup that wasn't working and the lessons that he learned from that experience. So, welcome, Jordan.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So here at the Startup Sessions, you know, we're all about the startup experience. And a big part of that experience is that, you know, the reality of the fact is a large part of startups fail. And nobody really wants to talk about failure. And we're going to talk about that from Jordan's perspective today and some of the lessons learned from that. And you recently wrote, well, I guess it wasn't recently, you were saying it's actually a while back that you wrote that blog article called My Startup Failed. And this is really, to me, it's a case study about huge lessons learned from your company that was called Zillionears. And I don't know if you fully realize the benefits of that article to other entrepreneurs out there, but there's a lot of wisdom to be gained in there. And, most people don't have the balls to talk about it, let alone, write about it. So you wrote about it. And I don't know, maybe you should write a book called My Failed Startup or something. Probably be a hit. So, first off, I think, let's start off by having you give us a little bit of background. Like, why did you decide to start your business in the first place? Was it for the big win? Was it because you couldn't stand the thought of working for somebody else? Or what was it that really prompted you to start your business in the first place?
Well, my entire life I've always had that drive to be my own boss and do my own thing.
Yeah.
And coming out of college, I went to college, actually got a social entrepreneurship degree. Okay. So I knew I wanted to be in the entrepreneur business and do my own thing. So I came out of college with a couple buddies, and we decided to start our own business. Right away, a lesson that I learned is you shouldn't just immediately say, oh, let's just start a business. You should probably have a reason to do it. But into that later. But I personally was in the music. I was working in the music industry kind of through an energy drink company. I was doing music endorsements. Okay. So I knew the space, kind of knew the space. I liked the space. I saw room for myself in the space. Okay. So that was pretty much where I wanted to focus myself. So me and a couple buddies, a couple mentors, had a few meetings and came up with the idea for Zillionears.
Okay.
It started off as one thing and it pivoted a million times.
Sure.
Until we narrowed in on what we wanted to do. Okay. And it ended up being like a flash sale site. So it was like a site for musicians to come in and put out their album, and people could buy it, and every time someone would buy it, the price would decrease. So it was it was incentivizing them to share the sale.
Okay.
So for us, it was like this genius idea that has never been invented.
Yeah.
So it was a holy shit idea for us.
Yes.
It couldn't fail, right? It can never fail. It's our idea. So we rode with that for a long time. We rode with that for almost 2 years.
Okay.
And about a year and a half of it was in development.
Okay.
With zero validation. So the development process was we develop what we think will be successful, and eventually we'll put out our final product and show the world, and then we'll be millionaires. It's obviously how it works.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit about, I guess, the path that I took and how it was formed.
All right.
Yeah.
Were you and your partners full-time, engaged in the startup full-time?
We started out right out of college. One guy had a full-time job, so he was working part-time after work.
Okay.
I had a part-time job and was working full-time on my job, on Zillionears, and then part-time on this other job until for about 6 months. And then the other guy quit his job. I quit my job, and I got laid off, which was awesome. And we went full-time for a year. So we were full-time employees of Zillionears for a year. It was just the two of us full-time. Yeah. We had a few other guys working with us.
Okay. All right. Were you just bootstrapping this, or were you funded? How did that aspect of it look?
Very, very bootstrapped.
Okay.
Very bootstrapped.
Okay.
We were living with our folks, which was great. Free meals. Got to pick up the groceries every week. It was awesome. I do miss that. But yeah, we were definitely bootstrapped. No funding. We did worked on a little fundraising, had a bunch of meetings, and they were very unsuccessful. And it was very depressing as well. It was a lot of rejection.
Yeah. Okay.
So we decided to give up the fundraising route and just focus on the startup itself.
Okay. Got it. So give us an idea of who your customers were, and maybe what, in your eyes, what was your key differentiator for your product?
So in the beginning, it was hard to say who our direct customer was because we were advertised, the way we were advertising was to the musicians, so to the artists themselves. So technically, our customer was the bands.
Got it.
But the end income came from the fans of the bands. Right. So we kind of had two customers, but in order to get the end goal of acquiring fans, we obviously had to bring on the artists themselves. So I'd say our direct customer was artists, indirect customer, but necessary are the fans.
Okay.
What was the other question?
The other question was, I guess the thing that really differentiated the product that you guys had from anything else that was out there on the market. Like, what did when you went to bands, like, what was, in a nutshell, what was your quick pitch to them?
Oh, the pitch is the worst. I don't even remember it. But I do. Our differentiator was we had a thing called a social price shifting structure. Okay. And we ended up patenting it. And that was our differentiator. And what it was every time somebody purchased an item, the price decreased. And we had a similar model to Kickstarter where we don't actually take your money, we don't take the fans' money until the end of the sale. So if there's 100 fans that buy the product, if the product starts at $10 and 100 fans buy it over the course of 1 month, and at the end of the month, that's when the sale ends, and 100 fans bought it, so now the price is $2. Okay. So we take $2 out of everybody's credit card. Okay. So we authorize their credit cards when they get into the sale, and we do the transaction at the end. So that was our big differentiator. To us, that was like the sexiest thing in the world. Sure. No one's thought of it. Yeah. And but the problem with that, major problem, is just right there, me explaining that to you, I don't even know if you understood it.
Yeah, I mean, I got the gist of it, but
it's very complicated. As simple as it sounds, we can't get the pitch across in. Nobody will understand the pitch in enough time to listen to the pitch.
Yeah, that's
the problem.
Yeah, that's the thing is you've got, customer attention span is seconds.
Exactly.
Probably not even a minute.
Exactly.
Okay. I mean, because it makes sense when you explain it to me, and I'm sitting here, captive audience, one-on-one listening. So it makes sense to me. And you said you had some influence or at least some connection to the music industry, which probably made it even more. I assume you had conversations with different bands and people that you knew that were like, hey, this sounds like a pretty cool idea, right?
Oh yeah. Well, our main mentor, who was one of our partners as well, he was a music attorney. Okay. And so he was very well connected in the industry. Yeah. And none of us have really ever, started from scratch like a startup. So we didn't really understand the whole process of validation and everything. Sure. So from our standpoint, it was like, oh, well, if he likes it, then obviously the bands are going to like it. Yeah. So we were pretty much banking all the validation on very minimal amount of people. Okay. So it was like taking a survey and, you ask two people on the street and you're like, oh, they both like it. 100% of the people are going to like it. It's perfect. Yeah. So validation was definitely our biggest downfall in the entire experience.
I mean, that sounds like maybe, I don't know if it was mistake number one, but it was certainly an early, I guess you didn't know what you didn't know at that time. You had someone that that was influential in the industry that was working with you that said, hey, this is great, let's go with it. But it sounds like that was one of the biggies in the beginning, like one of the big mistakes that led to, eventually you taking the business out back and putting it out of its misery, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
So one of the things I like to do in this format is, we've recognized, validation was one of the issues. From your perspective, I guess what was the lesson learned from that for you?
Well, I mean, the time you take on a startup, the amount of time it takes you to produce a minimum viable product, I think should be less. I mean, unless you're working on like some crazy computer science stuff, I think it should be less than 3 months. Okay. From my standpoint, we spent 1.5 years on development. Granted, I didn't know. I got into development during that process, so we were definitely at a disadvantage there in time as far as time goes. Right. But like I work on projects now, and I'm like, well, let's get the product out in like 2 weeks. It's probably going to be shitty, but let's get a product that kind of works. It can be buggy, and get it in the hands of customers and see if they like it. I would prefer to hack it out in a weekend and then see if it works. And if it does, maybe we'll think about it. But sure. Personally, I think 3 months is tops. Okay. And that's a major lesson. That's a major lesson I learned because I took 1.5 years of my life out on that, and it led me. I mean, I learned a lot of lessons, but I could have done a lot more in that time. I wasted a lot. Yeah. Okay. So in hindsight, you're saying, you spent 1.5 years baking the product, but you probably now you would have spent way less time, 3 months max, getting a basic version of the product out there for people to try and get feedback from that to know whether you would go any further or not. That specific project, Zillionears, I would say no more than 1 month. The site's not up anymore, so you can't see it. We recently finally shut it down officially. But a product like that, I mean, it's not extremely complex. I think a month from conception, you should have it out in a month, or max. I mean, that's a huge difference. A month. Looking back, you're saying a month, and you said you were in development for 1.5 years. Is that right? Yeah. The amount of iterations we had was mind-blowing. we would change it every few weeks. We'd be like, yeah, we'll just cut it and we'll start from here.
Yeah.
We did that way too many times. And we had no reason to do it. We had nobody from the outside to tell us why we should do it. They're not like, oh, I don't really like this button. We would just be like, kind of, this button's better. Or, we have no real reason to do it. So that's the major.
Well, I think that leads into something else that's, I don't know if it's part of your experience or not, but, when it's something that you're creating and it's your own, I tend to lean towards this too. I know a lot of other entrepreneurs that lean towards this, and that's like, it's your baby, right? So you've got this perfectionist attitude towards wanting to make it the best it can possibly be. And that's just like burning cycles and eating up time instead of just getting something out there for people to like test and, really validate and see what the response is. You can get caught in that cycle forever of just trying to make something perfect.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's exactly what we did. It was our baby. So, none of us were actually experts in any of the industries like engineering, designing, whatever. Mm-hmm. So it would be like practice, we'll make this iteration, but the next one will be better because we're just kind of practicing on this one. And then I was like, no, maybe we should put it out. But then we, spent another month fixing some designing issues in it. But realistically, the initial users that are going to use our product, aka our friends and family, they probably don't really care about any of that stuff. But if we put something out that looks ugly, but it's convenient for them or it adds value to them, they're going to like it and they're going to use it regardless of what it looks like. Yeah. So you need to put the product out ASAP. That is number one. Yeah. Okay. Huge lesson. An example that the same guy that I did Zillionears with, we did a product like a couple months ago. We were playing around with some ideas, and we built a product called Pigeon. It's just like a text message. You text message in a photo and a little quote, and it'll print it and send it to somebody. So it's like, it's like Snapchat for old people. Okay. So it's like a physical Snapchat, and we built it. I got it functioning in 24 hours. Wow. And we got it released to the public in 1 week, and I put it on Hacker News and got 200 users in a week and a half. So, that's just a mind-blowing difference between, one route you took and then the most recent route you took as far as getting something out there. That's incredible. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And it's from experience. Sure. That year and a half, although it was a major failure, it showed me. I obviously learned a ton of lessons, but the main lesson I learned was put it out, see what happens. Get it out there. Don't be shy. Yeah. Yeah. And that goes for. That's a life lesson for me. I know a couple buddies of mine that are doing. Working on, actually they're still in the music industry, working on kind of enhancing exposure and figuring out what the best route is for artists to go. Mm-hmm. And it's like, just put your content out constantly. Yeah. Don't wait for it to be perfect because then you're going to be forgotten. Yeah, yeah. As fast as things move today too. You can get passed up in a nanosecond. Okay. Wow. Okay, that's big stuff. In that year and a half that you guys were, doing reiterations of the product and stuff, at any point in that time, did any of the partners acknowledge or say, hey, we should, maybe we should just get this thing out, and like you were overruled by the other team members or whatever? No, none of us were experienced. So we all, if most people that start a startup, they think, well, the only way it's going to be successful is if you put it out perfect. Mm-hmm. So that was everyone's mentality. Yeah. And we were kind of all in that same boat, and nobody wanted to put it out until it was perfect, unless they did it and say it. Sure. But it seemed like it was, let's just make sure, let's solidify every single detail of it. Like the error, like if you have an error on the website, I'd spend weeks on making the errors that probably no one will ever see look good. Like I wanted the errors to look good. Yeah. Things like that, which are just outrageous. So stupid. Well, that just, it shows,
when something is your thing, you care so much about it and how it's going to be perceived, and God, it's just you go overboard, I guess, on making sure that it's going to be, like you said, perfect when it gets released.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Let's see. What else? There's just so much good stuff I'm trying to remember from your blog. I jotted some notes down from that. I'm going to take a look at them here.
Sure. Well, I guess in the meantime, I can kind of run through like what I'm doing now, and I guess what
Sure.
what happened on the way, and what I'm kind of getting into now. So, because I know your viewers are all either in a job, doing side projects,
right,
and figuring out if they want to move on from their job and start their own thing.
Sure. Yeah.
So I went kind of the opposite direction. I came out of college and never had a corporate job.
Sure.
I went right into a startup because
Yeah.
I bet my older sister $100 that I would never have a boss ever in my life. So I owe her $100. And so after the startup failed, I realized I want to be a technical co-founder. So I already knew some stuff, knew some coding, but I wasn't great at it. I don't think I could have gotten a job right away. Yeah. But I knew I wanted to be able to come out of a startup, work for a startup for a few years as a programmer, come out and be able to produce a product that I love in 3 months, and then maybe go into an incubator or get funding. Yeah. So I went the route of going to Dev Boot Camp, like a coding school.
Okay.
To the one, and it was awesome. And I brought myself up to speed. I wrote Zillionears in PHP, which is a programming language. And I brought myself up to Ruby, which is what most startups use. Yeah. And then I joined this startup here called Shopatumi, which is an awesome startup. And basically, I'm honing my skills now to be able to, in a few years, to be able to put myself out, have the credentials to be a technical co-founder, where VCs or angels or anybody can look at me and know that I have the ability to work on a team with programmers. I have the ability to, I have experience in startups, and they look at the fact that I failed in a startup. I think that is so much more valuable than having a startup. I mean, obviously it'd be great if my startup worked, but going into a new startup, having the skills, having the knowledge of why you failed, the real life knowledge. I mean, I can sit here and tell you these lessons all day, but it's really hard to actually, comprehend what I'm saying until you've done it yourself. Really know why you failed. And so all this together, I feel like I'm going to have pretty good stew of skills and knowledge to be able to bring myself to VCs or angels, or go into a new startup with a couple buddies or something. Sure.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, it's really allowed you to hone, your direction. And I've worked for software companies and a couple of startups over the last 15 years. And, even within a startup, as you probably are experiencing, there's a ton of stuff that goes wrong. There's little mini failures all along the way. And those are hugely valuable. So, you're in the process of building, it sounds like, a powerful resume that's, going to allow you to stay on track with some of the things you really, really want to do. And that's great. It's, you had a year and a half out of your life where you gained some amazing life skills and lessons learned and so forth. So that's worth, you can't put a price on that ultimately. Once you get down the road 5-10 years and you're in a leadership role, that's helped solidify who you are as an entrepreneur, as someone who's involved with a startup. So valuable lessons learned for sure.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Let me ask you, this is one question I had. You mentioned in your blog that, you should have packed it up early, but you felt like you had gone too far to quit. So let me ask you, how much sooner, knowing what you know now, I guess you kind of answered that earlier. You said a month, right? Because my question is, how much sooner would you have quit knowing what you know now? But you kind of said earlier, I guess, that you would have tested something. You would have got something out within a month. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as our development skills, I don't think me and the other engineer, I don't think we could have produced it in a month.
Yeah.
So, I mean, another thing is you should have somebody on the team that's capable of pushing it out quickly.
Sure.
But so in our situation, let's say we were able to produce that product in a year, which I think, we had a rough product in a year. And we were shopping it around. We were shopping around to musicians, fans, and investors.
Yeah.
So the overall consensus was, I can even quote somebody, I like it, but I don't love it.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, that was like, really? That's strange, because I love it. I thought everyone was going to love it. So at that moment, and that was our product, we couldn't really pivot from there. We spent so much time on it.
Yeah.
From that moment on, it was kind of like, well, we finally put it out to the world, and they don't love it. Nobody really loved it, or like maybe one or two people loved it, but it was probably like my mom and the other guy's mom. So we were like, this is interesting. So I was already kind of like, I knew, I wasn't sure if it was going to be happening, but in the back of my mind, I was still like, oh no, the right people need to see it for it to be successful.
Yeah.
I just need to get on some sort of blog or something. That's all we need is that jump start.
Just need that exposure.
which sometimes I could work, but very rare.
Yeah.
But in the back of my head, that's what I wanted. And so I think the moment we should have stopped, the moment we should have packed up shop was we had a musician who was going to use our product, convinced a musician to use our product. Took a lot of convincing. And he set up his social sale and then called us and was like, I think it's broken. We're like, what do you mean? We'll walk you through it. He's like, all right, well, I set it up and it won't let me set the ending price, like the lowest possible price. It won't let me set that to the same price as the maximum price. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, I know, because you want your fans to lower the price. And he's like, oh, no, I just want to sell it for like a set price. And I was like, but that's totally not what our company is. It makes no sense. So he didn't understand it.
He didn't even get it.
Finally did understand it.
Yeah.
He hated it.
Oh my God.
So we continued on. But that was the moment, that was a tipping point for me to know this is not going to work. But I'll work on it. I'll continue to work on it because I've gone too far.
Okay. You've invested so much time, so much money, so much energy that we just got to keep pushing. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And that's a big one too, because so many times I think entrepreneurs get out there with an idea, a service, a product, whatever, and they get lukewarm feedback because it's your idea, you think that, like you said, I just need more exposure. I need to be discovered. But what you want people saying is, I've got to have that. What you're offering, I've got to have it. And it can be as simple as, one of my consulting clients was talking about, a job she had photographing newborns, and how one of her clients, like, she collected payment on receipt. And while she was taking pictures of the baby, he went out and gave plasma so he could come back with the money and pay her to get the baby pictures, because that's how important it was. So that's like my new analogy. It's like, you want people so like eager to give you money that they're willing to go out and give plasma to get it.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's true.
Well, I mean, there's so many good lessons in, what we've discussed and what you've learned and taken away from your experience with your business. What would you say? Because a lot of the people that I work with are people who work in a corporate role, and they're just, for whatever reason, they're kind of burnt out, and they think they want to start something on the side. What would be your biggest recommendation to someone who is still working? They want to start something on the side. What's your biggest recommendation for someone in that position?
It really comes down to what space you're trying to get into. Mm-hmm. So if you want to make, everyone's idea right now is make an app.
Yeah, that's everywhere.
An app out there. It's pretty universal.
Yeah.
If you don't have technical skills, then I'd say link up with someone who does have technical skills.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
mash the skills together. If you are in marketing, but you have no technical skills, match up with somebody who does Ruby on Rails or something and can pump an app out pretty quick. See if they're interested in a side project, and then use your skill base. If you're in marketing, make some sort of analytics app for marketers or something. I don't know. But you do need to have somebody on your team if you're trying to get into the app space. Obviously, that's technical. I would not recommend hiring somebody, spending a lot of money on an app, because you will iterate millions of times.
Yeah.
So like I said, your first product is going to suck.
Yeah.
And they're not going to even change the color of a button for free.
Yeah.
So you hire a company to make an app for you. You're going to want changes every 5 minutes probably.
Yep.
And that's not going to happen. So the best thing to do is definitely link up with somebody. You can go to there's Ruby meetups. You don't have to be technical to go to them. Obviously, most people are.
Yeah.
Hop into some meetups and see if you can find somebody who's looking for a side project to work on. Other than that, if you want to get technical, it is way easier now than it's ever been to learn to code.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't need to be a computer science major. I'm not a computer science major to learn to code well enough to build an app, to get a product out, to be able to iterate upon a product. That'd be my best advice. Either way, you're going to be able to get something going.
Okay. That's great advice. Fantastic. All right. Well, Jordan, thank you so much for taking some time out of your evening to walk us through your failed startup experiment.
I'm turned into the face of failure.
Like I said, I don't know. That's powerful. Nobody has the cojones to go talk about their failures, and you just put it out there in a blog that has reached at least a few people. So
yeah, I mean, I got Michael, right? I got you.
Yeah. I liked it. It's nobody talks about it, so I just wanted to breach the subject, bring it up, and flesh it out with you. So I'm glad we had the opportunity to do that.
Excellent. Yeah. Thanks for having me on the show. Yeah,
absolutely. So if people want to reach out to you, talk shop, talk startup with you, are you open to entertaining emails, things of that nature?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I can if you want to put my email on some text, or it's just nemrowj@gmail.com.
Okay.
I'm also on Twitter, just @Nemrow. It's my handle. So
okay.
I mean, I prefer email. It's lengthier. I can get back. But yeah, I get a lot of emails actually from people who want advice on pretty much the same situation. A couple people are just coming out of school, or they're in a job they don't like.
Yeah.
A couple people are debating to go to med school that they just got into. That's kind of a random one. They want to know if they should drop out and start a startup.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's all risky, but it's all fun.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that I hear over and over again is that entrepreneurs, whether they've failed at something or succeeded wildly or somewhere in between, is that it's been incredibly exhilarating. It's been fun. It's their life has been filled with just more, such more of a sense of being alive than at any other time. So, I think that's something good that we can take away from any
Absolutely.
entrepreneurial experience. Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much. For all of you listening or watching, if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to get all the startup sessions delivered to your email. Just go to the episode page and put your email in the inbox, and you'll get all these episodes delivered straight to your inbox every week. And also, if these interviews are something that you want to listen to while you're on the road, running, walking the dog, you can now download them on the Startup Sessions podcast on iTunes. So thanks for watching, everyone. We'll see you next week on a new episode of the Startup Sessions. Thanks. Take care. Bye-bye.